If you have two shoes, please sell one and buy a sword. If you have two trousers, please sell one and buy a sword, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is no longer on the streets. This revolution is in the mind, because if you are not in charge of your mind, your body is a tool that your oppressor will use to enslave you and enslave your people. Peace and blessing, freedom and decolonization to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us again in this special session that we are going to discuss about a very important topic again as part of our training program, where we aim to produce new leaders in Africa, competent in business and in politics. My name is King Kabbalah, a member of the African Continental Unity Party, as well as member of the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy. And it's my pleasure to be your presenter of this day's session or this day's lesson. And what we want to discuss today is the African mindset comparative to the European mindset. It is very important that we understand this, because the current generation of leaders was raised to believe that European people can one day be responsible to our problems. In other words, they were raised to believe that there is or there can be a European solution to the African problem. But as we continue to have more experience in interacting with the different people in this world, we realize that there cannot be European solution to the African problem. And there has to be a reason for that. And we need to explain that, especially to the youngest one. When we tell them that you cannot expect that European people will solve the African problem or Chinese people will solve the African problem, we need to justify that assessment. And that's the purpose of this module. And most particularly, the point is, we believe that one day, not we, I mean, most of our people believe that one day the Western man will come to his mind and realize that he has been oppressing us for a long time, and therefore decided to end the oppression that he has inflicted upon other people, particularly people of color, and therefore begin to live humanely as we should be living in the world, creating peace, creating prosperity for everyone, stuff like that. But that is impossibility when we study the history of the world and when we understand who is the man we are dealing with. So this is what we are obviously trying to discuss on this lesson. And by understanding, right, the mindset or the psyches of the African people and the psyches of the European people, we will be able to act intelligently in whatever field of endeavor where we find ourselves, whether we are leaders in the business sector or we are leaders in politics. We will be well prepared, because, you know, if we say that life is a war or is a battle, then it only makes sense that the battle becomes easier when you know the people you are dealing with or people you are fighting with. In other words, if I have to use the words of or the motto of the organic African paradigm, it says that know thyself, know thy world, and know thy environment, right? Know thyself, actually know thyself, know thy enemy, and know thy environment. Know thyself, know thy enemy, and know thy environment. If you are able to know who you are, to understand everything about yourself, means your history, your potential, so forth and so on, and you are also able to know your enemies, the people that you are dealing with in the world, and also to know the environment, that means the world in which you are living, you are really one step to your success. You are actually on that journey, and all that you need to do is just to make one step and you are a very successful person. And that's what we need to teach to the young children today to make sure that we don't have another generation of people who grow up with myth or with nightmare of believing that one day the Western man will be responsible for the development or the salvation of Africa. That is impossibility. It is impossibility, and you will discover why it is impossibility through this presentation. And before I close this comment or I close this introduction, I want to reiterate something that I saw on the status of King Giovanni is very, very profound, is that when people are intellectually, psychologically, and spiritually empty, they naturally decline their responsibility to build for themselves, and then they have to rely on others to do for them what they have to do for themselves. This is very profound. When people are psychologically, intellectually, and morally empty, they will definitely deny their responsibility in the building of the world they need or they want, and rely on other people to do that for themselves. But the people that we want to rely on are actually, how can I call it? Beast, dangerous beast. And to them, we appear to be praise. And if we have to continue in this perspective of believing that one day the World Health Organization will treat all the diseases of Africa, the World Trade Organization will develop Africa, the UN will give peace to Africa, we will then be the people who are indefinitely condemned to remain in poverty. And we will find out through this presentation. So now let me share my screen quickly to begin the presentation of today. As you can see, this is the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy, which is Academy for future leaders in politics and business. Our aim is to create new leaders in politics and business. And the training of today is all about Eurasian and African psyches. When you understand the difference between the two, you will definitely be able to make policies about yourself and about your people in whatever area where you will be responsible, the policies that will help to the development of Africa. And there are a few things that we'll discuss today as a part of the agenda. One is the society and its needs. And the second thing is the human needs from what we can call Eurocentric perspective, as well as human needs from an African perspective. And then we will conclude by making a contrast between the two perspectives as far as the needs is concerned. Now, let's begin with the society and needs. The first thing that we need to understand as leaders is that when a society is formed, and when we talk about society, we talk about you, me, everyone else who make up what we call, for example, the African society, for example. And today we have this African society that has been broken down by colonialism into small colonial enclosures that we call countries. And in these countries we find artificial societies, not really the original society as it was. So we find in these countries we find Zambian society, we can talk about Ghanaian society, we can talk about Kenyan society, Tanzanian society, so forth, so on, and So when the society from the beginning, when the society is about to be formed, the first thing, or actually what creates the need to form a society, is the fulfillment of the needs of the people in that society. You see, if there were some needs that I want to fulfill, that you want to fulfill, that another person wants to fulfill, that your neighbor wants to fulfill, there was not going to be a need to form a society. You see, I can live myself in a jungle, in a forest where I don't need anybody else, because I don't need to be part of the society. So what makes us to be part of a society, what actually underlies the formation of every society and thereafter every civilization is the needs fulfillment, because people have needs that need to be fulfilled, and these needs cannot be fulfilled by one single person. You see, I need to have my clothes that I'm wearing. I need to have this camera in order to come to you with this presentation. I need to have food. I need to have a shelter. So I cannot by myself do all these things. I cannot farm the food that I eat by myself and do the clothes that I need by myself and do everything that I need by myself. If you think about things that you need every day, there are a lot of them and you cannot do by yourself. So you need other people. You need the people who are producing the food. And the food, people who, for example, plant the maize. You need people who are fishing. You need people who are producing oil. You need people who are making clothes. So that all these people, in whatever items they are doing, we are able to participate in what we can call an exchange, so that everyone can satisfy his need. I produce something and I take from other people in order to take from what other people produce in order to fulfill my need. And this coming together of doing different things to fulfill our various needs is what we call the formation of a society, or actually is what is the basis of every society. You see, so in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is that every society is driven by the needs. The needs. So let me give you an example so that you understand what I'm trying to talk about. We know that the modern human being is born in Africa, in the Central Africa, the area that we call today Uganda, Congo, that area anyway. And when the modern human being was born there, he found himself or herself in need of protection, for example, because as you know, that area of Africa is where you can find all kind of dangerous animals. You find lions, find leopards, all these beasts are there. Now, it was dangerous for human being to survive there because it was, continually attacked by animals and killed. So people had to think, what can we do for our protection? Security was the first agent need that human being first. So they had to form the first human society. They had to come together every time when it's dark, when it's night, and come together and dwell together so that the animal will not attack them, because mostly, animal will attack you when you are alone. So if many of you are able to defend yourself, you are able to protect yourself. So basically that fact of coming together to protect themselves was a kind of fulfillment of the first need, which is the need for protection at that time. So from the moment they came together, other needs showed up, obviously. They had to find how we can eat, how we can clothe ourselves, how we can build shelters, and that's how the first human society was formed, and thereafter the first human civilization that we know was formed, which is the African civilization that we were able to hand over to the rest of the people. So you see, it is the needs fulfillment that drives every society. If there's no need, there's no also reason for a society to exist. Today, when we look in a society today, you wake up in the morning, you go either to school, there's somebody else who's there to teach you, or you go to work, you work with other people. So these interactions bring us together to form the society, or to put our society in motion. Now, we have different ways of perceiving the needs. You see, one we need to understand is that these needs, the needs that we have are shaped by the resources that we have in a society, or the availability of the resources that every society has, right? For example, we all have the need to eat, but what I eat in the Congo colonial enclosure where I was born, and what another person eats in China is not the same food, even though we experience the same way the need to eat the food. But what a Chinese person eats or an Indian person eats and what a Ghanaian person or Congolese person eats may not be the same. Why? Because the resources available to these people are not the same. In China, for example, you see people eating some food based on what is available in the environment. In the Congo, people grow mostly their corn, so the basic food there is what we call fufu or papa. That's mixture of the maize. So you go to other people like in Ghana or in Senegal, you see that the basic food there is rice, because that is the ingredient which is available in the environment in most cases, in majority, right? So you have to, or the needs, our needs, the way we fulfill our needs is shaped by the availability of the resources in the environment where we find ourselves. So in a nutshell, or in one sentence, I will say that our needs are shaped, or the fulfillment of our needs is actually shaped and influenced mostly by the environment in which we live. And that way that environment shapes our needs, fulfillment becomes also our tradition and our culture. So if you think deeply, you see that your culture is always related to your environment, to the nature, the place in which you are living. Because in most cases, your culture makes references to the environment in which you live. You need to keep this in mind, because it's very important. Is what actually defines the difference in the mindset of the African person and the European person, as we'll discuss it later. But firstly, let's see, when it comes to needs fulfillment, how does a European person looks at the needs of the society, and how does an African person looks at the needs of the society? This is what obviously underlies the difference in the mindset that these people have. And when we understand the difference in the mindset, it's going to be easier to ask yourself a question and respond to that question by yourself. Is it possible for me to come up, for example, this is my question that I'm asking after I've understood the difference of needs, or the different perspective at which we look at the needs as being African as well as being European, or all being European. I had to ask myself, is it possible that one day we can come to form an organization that includes black and white without having to face a reality whereby one particular person wants to undermine the effort of other people or the well-being of other people in order to dominate and to oppress them? And the answer that I had to answer to myself is, it is impossible. So the way forward for me is, the African person must build his own house and the European person must build his own house. We can maybe meet now in the middle point for certain things that we need to do as being part or being citizens of the planet Earth, because we cannot do otherwise. We are in the one world, we are connected in different ways, but for development to happen, for peace to take place in the world, for whatever that we believe is necessary for the betterment of our life to happen, we need to build our own system. We need to stop relying on the Western people system, because their mindset is totally different from our mindset, and therefore we cannot create an umbrella that will bring us together in peace and harmony. There will be always war, conflict, domination, that tendency of one want to dominate another, that kind of a supremacy and stuff like that. Now, let's go back to the point of the world views, or the Western views on the Western view on the needs or social needs. First of all, the Western society is a society that is mostly structured in what I call hierarchy. The Western man looks everything in the order of hierarchy. For him, there must be something superior and there must be something inferior. So the idea of equality is a very strange idea to the Western man. Even if you meet up with them, you smile, you talk and you laugh, you do whatever that you want to do, or you work together, in their mind, in their subconsciousness, the idea of equality has been very strange to them. And that's why you see war in the world today. All these wars is because Western society doesn't want to be equaled or want to be suppressed by other society. Why are they fighting China today? If you ask yourself that question. For example, Chinese is a capitalist society, right? And the Western society, which has been preaching capitalism all over the world, should have embraced China to say, okay, this is our students who studied well, who learned well the lesson that we have given to the world of capitalism. Then let us embrace him. But they don't want that. They are fighting China because they don't want China to suppress them or to be equal to them. The same thing with Russia, even among themselves. So the idea of equality is strange to them. So in the worldview, everything must be put in hierarchy. That's why even human beings are put in hierarchy. You have the white race on top of everything. Even though scientifically speaking, you cannot describe the concept of race. Race is what we can call socio-cultural concept. It's not a scientific, you cannot prove it, right? You cannot prove a race scientifically speaking. It's just in a socio-cultural context, and which is mostly based on the culture of European people. So they have to put their race on top of everything. They have to put the women below them. They have to put now other race under. You see, the reason why we have this thing of feminism today is simply because for a long time, women have been excluded from the social structures of power by the white man who has set up the world order since his coming out of the dark age, right? So, and the women have found themselves excluded from power, oppressed in one way, in certain way, because domination will always give birth to oppression. So now women are fighting back to get what they call equality, and the men are still even resistant to give them the fair share, of the world opportunities and world benefits. So this is the worldview of the European people. Now, when it comes to the needs, we see that they also put their needs in a certain hierarchy. And the most popular Western scholar who came up with this idea of hierarchy of needs is called Abraham Maslow. As you can see from the chart, for him, he put the needs in certain hierarchy. So that hierarchy is actually means the least important needs and the most important needs. And when you think critically about what he deemed to be least important needs, you will find that they are the actually most important needs that sustain human life. At the bottom of his hierarchy is what we call physiological needs, which are actually the needs for survival. Needs such as food, water, shelter. If you don't eat, you will die. If you don't drink water, you will die. But he put this one as the least important needs on his hierarchy. While at the top of the hierarchy, he put the needs such as self-actualization. You see, you can survive, you can live, even though you don't achieve what he called self-actualization, but you cannot live without food, without water. So I'm asking you, what is the most important needs here? The need that sustain our life or the need for self-actualization? Anyway, that was just a kind of a bracket to project critically on this hierarchy of needs. So now, according to Maslow, as I already said, you have at the bottom the needs, the physiological needs. And when you move from that level, you have what is called need for safety. For example, security. You need to be secured. You need to live in a house that is got doors and stuff like that. And from there, you have the need for love or social need, to be loved and to love other people, to find yourself having friends and stuff like that. And as you move, you continue to move up the ladder. You have the need for esteem. That means where you want respect, you want to be attractive, you want stuff like that. So at the top of the ladder or the pyramid, you have the need that he called self-actualization. So the point here is that self-actualization is actually individualistic needs. That's what I wanted to point out here. The most important needs, social need in the Western view, is the needs of individualism. You see, so that means for the Western society, as it's written here, the society is driven by the culture of individualism and self-interest. That is what everyone wants to achieve, because that is the top of the needs. I mean, the top level of needs that anyone want to achieve in that society, because this was what drives the society. Achievement of these needs right here is what drives every person in the Western society. And unfortunately, we have been indoctrinated in the same way of looking at the reality, and we forgot our own culture, and we are now pursuing the highest level of need, which is self-actualization, which is individualistic and selfish type of needs. It means it's all about yourself. That is why you see that in the Western society, collective rights is less important than individual rights. That's what they say. Their thinkers will tell you that the private right is more important than the collective rights. That is why they're pushing so much the idea of private property. If today we talk about neoliberalism, the motto of neoliberalism is all about private profits, private growth, whereby all the government or public entities are being sold out to private enterprises. And this is what drives the Western society. Is all about individualism. Is all about individualism. This is how the Western society or the Western man looks at the social needs. Is about his own, his own achievements. That is why today we live in the world that is so rich, the world that is so abundantly rich, right? We're talking about, 100 trillion US dollars worth of riches in the world today. But at the same time, they are talking about 70% of the world's population that is really poor and in deep poverty. I'm always thinking that the world that is worth about 100 trillion US dollars and the world population has reached 8 billion recently. If you have to divide, for example, to give everyone or to make a provision for everyone to have at least $1 million, it's not even gonna be 50% of the world's wealth. It's still gonna be below. But because of the culture of individualism, that cannot be done, because all that money must be earned by one person. Not even earned, must belong to one individual person. You see, as we're speaking right now, there are few individuals, actually less than 10. As Oxfam International published it in 2016, less than 8 men only. There's no even women among them who possess 50% of the world's wealth. And you can guess the outcome of that kind of race is for one particular individual one day to become now in possession of, if not 50% of the world's wealth, but of maybe 100% of the world's wealth. So this is all triggered and sustained by this culture of individualism that drives the Western society. And we have been embarked into that without critical mindset, without critical thinking about that, without even analyzing our own culture in comparison to that culture to see what is suitable to us as African people. Now, this is the Western world analysis of the human needs or social needs. Now, what is now the African view of the needs? There's no many ways to describe the African system of needs or African organization of needs, of social needs. We know, all of us, the concept of Ubuntu is the highest achievement as far as African culture is concerned. If you don't know it, it's because you have been already indoctrinated into the Western way of thinking. Then you believe that your own achievement is the most important thing that you need to get, like you becoming the owner of everything, and anybody else suffers, anybody else stays in poverty and stuff like that. That is the most important achievement. That is the highest achievement. No, that is selfish. That has never been part of the African culture. So in African culture, the highest achievement that drove our ancestors was Ubuntu. And that's the reason why in the African society, you couldn't find the word to describe, for example, an orphan, because every time a child lost his parents, everyone in that society became the parents of that child. And even the king himself, or the one who was ruling the society, had to take responsibility of that child, had to become the father of those who don't have the fathers. And that's the reason why in African society we have never thrown away our parents or our grandparents to put them in the house that we call the old-aged house or stuff like that, whatever they call it in the Western society. I don't even have that word in my language, because in the Western society, as you grow older, as you become grandparents, stuff like that, you are not supposed to live with your family anymore. You go and they put you in a place where you live alone because they don't want to take care of you, stuff like that. Anyway, in African society, we didn't have the word to describe old people, and we didn't have houses, separate house for them, because they were part of us. In the African society and culture, according to Dr. John Henry Clark, we didn't have the word to describe a thief, because nobody has never went to his neighbor to steal his belonging. So when you look at this, you see already now the difference in the structure of the society. We have as Ubuntu the highest level of achievement. So Ubuntu is all about collective achievement. So instead of you becoming the owner of everything alone, while other people are deprived of the necessity of life, you in Africa, we need to become owners of everything collectively, together. We need to become the owners of our society. We need to decide together about our society. So this is the highest level of achievement when it comes to the African culture. So everyone in the African culture who works is working to achieve this level of achievement. That means to bring other people to have the same benefits of what our society produce in terms of resources, wealth, and all these benefits. So it means if I have the knowledge, I need to share the knowledge with other people to empower them. If I find an opportunity, right, of making money, of doing business, I need to involve my people so that together we can exploit that opportunity and make money and improve our lives and improve our situation. So I do remember some years back in Africa, if I have to go to my aunties or stuff like that, I don't even have to call and book for appointment or something like that. I just need to go there, and whatever food is there, even if they didn't know I was coming, that food gets shared with everybody. In fact, there's no word in my language to describe what you call cousin, nephew. Those words don't exist. Whatever you call cousin in most of African language is brother. That's all. Whatever you call nephews is still brother. The brother of your father is your father. The sister of your mother is your mother. That's how we call them as we grew up. So this is very important to understand that there's a difference, in the organization of the society when it comes to African society and the European society. And this difference was mainly based on the needs of, or the needs structure of every society. Now, coming back to the point of where comes our needs. As I said earlier on, our needs are structured, and the way we go in fulfilling these needs is structured by the availability of the resources in our society. You see, as I said from the beginning, the type of the resources that you have dictates the kind of activities that you engage in as a part of the society, and also dictates the type of the needs that you're gonna have in that particular society. Now, let me explain a bit better about this point so that you understand the fundamental difference of mindset between the Western society and the African society. And for us to do this, we need to answer the question of how did Africans evolve in comparison to how did Europeans evolve. I'd already explained that the modern human being today, as we know him today, is born in Africa about 200,000 years, right? And when the man was born in that area where he was born, he found himself surrounded by abundance, or how can I call it, abundancy of opportunities. And the first important thing that was given to man when he was born, it's what we call the sun. And the sun is the giver of life. It's the energy that gives life to all living things, all trees, animals, human beings, fishes, whatever that you talk about, need the sun energy in order to be alive. And without the sun, nothing will be alive. So the African man happened to find himself, an African woman, of course, to find herself in a place where the sun was abundant. And the abundancy of sun gave the necessary energy for food to grow, for vegetation to grow and to flourish, and so that the food can be abundant for the African man. And now, because the food was there, every African person will wake up in the morning. He didn't have too much worries in his mind because the food is available. He knows that he just have to reach out to a mango tree and grab some fruit and eat as part of his breakfast, and then put himself under the sun to get some kind of melanins, and after that go and get some maize or some kind of a crop that he had in his farm, and then eat. And that's pretty much the day, and eventually come and socialize with his children and begin to think about what kind of policy we can implement in this society to keep ourselves at peace and to progress ourselves. And that's how our ancestors were able to think and to become astronomers. You find people who are able to trace the course of the star and tell you that this star has been in activities for 50,000 years and stuff like that, without all these modern tools that we have today. That's how our ancestors were the philosophers, the first philosophers, the first doctors, the first astronomers. This is because this is actually based on the availability of the resources, and that's why John Henry Clark said there was no thief in African society, because how are you going to steal from your neighbor and to kill him if you know that you have the same thing that he has? The food that you're looking for is right there. Everyone can go and grab some food and grab some fruits, whatever that you need, and eat and enjoy life. And life was beautiful. That is actually the reality that prevailed in Africa right? At the time of our ancestors. You can read Sheikh Anta Diop. You find him in his book explaining these things in more detail about the African, the way that Africa evolved. And it's not just, this is, according to Sheikh Anta Diop, this is not something special about just African people themselves. He said that anybody, even Indians, even anybody who could have be put in that area, who could have found themselves or who could have been born in that area with all the conditions that were available in the area where the modern human being was born, he was going to develop the same culture, the same civilization, the same development that our ancestors developed. Because what defines the people's mindset, what defines the people's needs, and the way to achieve those needs is the availability of the resources in the place or in the environments where people are. So the more available things you have, the peaceful you become, the quiet or the calm you become, you see. But when you don't have much, you are always worrying how to find what you need for you to eat. And that is the reality on the other side where European people evolved. Now, according to the modern or the current understanding of how European people evolved, and according to Sheikh Anta Diop and other scientists, European man is an African man, actually, first of all, who migrated to Europe. He left Africa to go to Europe at about 40,000 years ago. You see, he was born in Africa about 200,000 years ago. He stayed in Africa for 100 years, right? During those 100 years, he already established science, mathematics, and all things that were needed for the society to flourish as a human society or as a civilization, a civilized society. He already established those principles, and now he had to leave Africa to go to Asia, firstly, to bring those. He went there, he migrated there with the same notions, with the same understanding, with the same knowledge, with the same thing that he had already invented, tools, you name them. That's about, I think, 80,000 years ago, right? Now, at 40,000 years ago, he also migrated from Africa to go to Europe. And unfortunately, when he got to Europe, he found themselves in what is called the glaciation period of Verm 1 and Verm 2 that lasted for 100,000 years, according to scholars, including Sheikh Anta Diop. So he found themselves in 40,000 years ago, during that time of glaciation, which means everything was icy, and that's actually the weather, the condition of weather, destroyed what is called melanocyte, so that he lost his pigmentation to become now what it is now. And we know that he was an African person. Why? Because in the caves where he was living, we find the paintings in those caves, and most of those paintings are stories of Africa. For example, you find that he has painted animals that cannot be found in Europe, in the place where he was living, animals that are found in Africa. So he also migrated there to Europe with the same mindset, same skills, the same memory of things that he had already done in Africa. So that's not the major point. The most important point is that when he found himself there with very limited sun reaching to his land, there was no enough food that was growing. There was no enough trees, enough vegetables. The necessary things that were needed to sustain his life were not available. Therefore, in the mindset of the Western man or the white man, he didn't have that same mentality that an African man had of, you wake up in the morning peacefully, you grab the food, you eat, and then you socialize with other people, and you build that culture of Ubuntu, of doing things together, because there's no too much competition, there's no too much fighting, because the food is there. But for him, when the white man wakes up in Europe, the Caucasian man, when he wakes up in the morning, the first thing that comes to his mind is, who can I attack today in order to feed myself? Because he doesn't have food. He needs to hunt. He needs to hustle. He needs to find somebody that he can fight against, that he can wage war against, so that he can get what he needs to feed himself. And that basically is the culture of European people, or that actually, structured the needs of European people and how to fulfill those needs, and became also the culture and the tradition of the people. As I said earlier on, that the way we approach our needs defines our culture and our tradition. So for him, waging war in order to survive was part and is still part of the European culture. That is why when you see in the European history, you see that they have been waging wars of extermination without mercy. And even if sometimes some Africans look at the situation of Africa today and say that, well, Africa is so divided, it is not possible to unite us. Well, if division or war or conflict between Africa will be the limitation to accomplish the unity, then European men would have never been united. The European Union could not exist today. Sorry. So, because Europeans are the ones who were mostly divided, are the ones who were mostly fighting dangerously to exterminate themselves, and their culture is rooted in fight, in warfare. Every place where Europeans have gone, they had the tendency to dominate, to oppress, and to exterminate. And even Marcus Garvey said it better. He said the attitude of white men is to dominate, to oppress and exterminate any other weak people that he comes in contact with. So this is where the difference is when it comes to the perception or the psyche of African people and European people. This is where the difference is. Look at today, they are fighting among themselves. And they are fighting for what? For resources. Every war that has taken place in the world, the wars that Europe started was just to secure more resources, because since their beginning, in their subconsciousness, they've always thought that they are lacking something. They're always having that alarm in their mindset of lack and scarcity. They've always think that there's something that is lacking, right? Resources are not enough. Therefore, they need to wage war to secure more resources. That is why you see in their culture today that particular way of pushing the agenda of individualism and private property. So it looks like almost like everyone in Europe want to own everything that is to be owned. Everything that exists in the world. Everyone want to have or to possess everything by himself or herself. That's why the culture of private property is really important in Europe. You see, you can attack government things in Europe, that's fine, but as long as you move now towards attacking private properties, then that you see how these people react. And if you want to get them acting quickly, touch the private property, touch their interest, then you see how they mobilize themselves to take action. So when they talk about the war in Libya, even though it was a war that apparently, or according to them, was to end the dictatorship of Muammar Gaddafi, that's a lie. It was war for the resources. They want to get the oil of Libya. When they talk about the war in Iraq, it was for American enterprises to secure the oil refineries there in Iraq in order to exploit the resources of the country. Every place where they've gone, they've waged wars for resources, even the wars that they have waged against themselves. So this is the mindset of European people. Of course, we must always understand that there is no rule without exception. So you may find a few people here and there who think differently, but make no mistake, good people who think differently from the rest have been existed even during the time of slavery, during the time of colonialism, but they were unable, their goodwill, their good thoughts were unable to stop the industry of slavery from happening, or to stop the industry of colonialism from happening. So you don't have to rely on the good morality of these few white people who think nicely about you as African people, who think humanly. You don't have to rely on them for your salvation. Your salvation is something that you need to plan and to execute with your own hands. If you leave it in the hands of other people, you will suffer consequences of your negligence. And in that case, God has nothing to do with your suffering. Even though you are suffering, praying every day, it doesn't matter. You are suffering because you didn't take the courage to plan for your own life and to execute with your own hands what you want to achieve in your own life. And that's what we are here doing. We speaking these things to raise your consciousness, or actually to create a kind of awareness to you, so that you can join us and together we can plan for our better future as African people. Because if we don't do it, then the future of Africa is doomed to be that of slavery and all kind of precarities that we can talk about. So you see now the basic difference in the mindset. And up until today, our mindset is still of how can I put it, of Ubuntu. Despite everything that Western society has done to us, we are still willing to reach out to them to establish some meaningful relationships of peace, of dignity. Look at our leaders, our poor leaders. Every time when they come to power, they try to reach out to the United States, they try to reach out to the Western society to at least create the conditions of peace and the tranquility so that Africa can develop. But look at what the Western do in return. They try to undermine every effort of African people to develop, so that they can keep us under subjection and they can continue to plunder our resources. You see, there's a book called How the World Works by Noam Chomsky. He describes some policies that were drafted by the American thinkers. One of them he spoke about was George Kennan. He said that in those policies that were described, that were elaborated in 1945, just out after the World War ended, they wanted to keep the American domination of the world. So they drafted the policies to actually divide the world in different parts and assign each part some specific tasks that were related to the American interest. And Africa was part of what is called the Grand Area. And the role and responsibility, or the task assigned to Africa as a whole, was to be the provider or the supplier of the natural resources for Europe to develop, or for American economy. And the second task that was given to Africa was to be the markets for the products of the Western society. So whatever they produce, their cars, the cell phone, whatever, we need to be the markets. We just need to be there to buy and create the economy. And secondly, we need to be there to provide the natural resources which they need for their own economic development. That's why you see, when you go to Africa, in the Congo, Ghana, you see young children. In Cote d'Ivoire, young children in the field trying to exploit what you call the coltan, the natural resources. In Ivory Coast, they are working the plantation for the what you call the cocoa, the fruits that obviously produce from which we have the chocolate. So we give away these things at 10% of the revenue that these products make. So we give them, they sell us, they buy them. Actually, they take them for free because they are the ones who dictate the price. So they just give us a meager salary to keep us alive and continue to work for them. And when these products go to them, they transform them and they sell them at 90% price at which they bought it from, or they took it from, or of 90% of the price which it took them to get those things from Africa, or they spent to get those things in Africa. So this is a reality of the mentality of the Western people, because in their mind, at the back of their mind, in their subconsciousness, you have what we call scarcity. So they will do everything to secure all the resources. So now the question becomes, what can we expect out of the relationship between Europe and Africa? As I said it well, there might be some good white people, but you must understand that good white people cannot stop any bad agenda that the global Western society has for Africa. Because these good white people were there during slavery, during colonialism. They did not stop those industries from flourishing, right? And they are there today during this time of neocolonialism, and they will not gonna end neocolonialism until those who are affected by neocolonialism to stop and end it. And those are you and me. So my question is, what can we as African people to expect from them? And I leave you to find your answer by yourself and to bring that answer in our comment period, where we do question and answer and comments to the lecture, so that we can discuss the way forward. But as far as I'm concerned, myself personally, the way forward is that we need to be aware of the people we are dealing with, because every time when we misjudge people or misunderstand people with their intention, we are going to act stupidly, and our actions will be not beneficial or productive to us or to our efforts of liberation and emancipation. We will always misjudge people, as we are misjudging Chinese now. We think that our hope lies in Chinese hands. And even now, presently, I'm seeing that some head of state, some leaders are relying on India, on Russia to save us from imperialism. You see, if the Russians save us from the modern imperialism, you know what's going to happen? They will replace the modern imperialist and become also the other imperialist, the other oppressors of Africa. Don't make no mistake, black people are not loved in Russia. So it should be a strategy, but it shouldn't be a way of life that we put our reliance on them and we say, okay, these are the people who serve us. No, we need to have at the back of our mind that these people will always want to get everything by themselves. And for them to get them, they will always want to wage wars to get those things. So the question is, what can be our relationship with them? So now, we brought this chapter to you as a potential leader, because every African must be a potential leader, so that you can think about it. If you become a leader, either of a corporate, right, or of your own business, or of your country, you must understand the psychology of the Western people, of the Western men, or of the Caucasian. And if you understand their psychology, you will not misjudge them, you will not underestimate them or overestimate them, but you'll be able to take some decisions that will help you to achieve what you want to achieve. And especially when you know what they want, you know how they want it or how they go about getting it, you'll be able to also put your own strategy of what you want. One idea we need to remove from our mind today is to see a world as a collective, united thing which has a common agenda of prosperity for everyone and peace for everyone. No, that is a nightmare. And that nightmare becomes accepted because of the machine propaganda, which indoctrinates most of people with the lazy mentality of not being able to look critically at their reality and understand the world as it's supposed to be. You see, the objectives of the Western society are not the same as the objectives of Africa cannot be the same, as we want freedom at this moment from Western hegemony, and Western society wants domination over the rest of the world. So we don't have the same objective. So when you become a leader and go into those meetings, for example, the UN General Assembly, to discuss there, you need to keep that in your mind. We don't have same objectives. So even though we go there to appear, to talk, to feel beautiful or to feel good because we're talking in what we call the concept of nation, we need to keep in our mind that our objectives should be to undermine their projects of keeping Africa under subjection. So I think I've tried as much as I can, or as much as I should, to make it clear at least that we have a different mindset, and also we have some Africans already who have been corrupted, alienated, who are, how can I put it, white people in the black skin. So they will talk more about private rights or private properties and stuff like that, or they will be the promoters of the Western agenda. But you, as an authentic African person, you need to understand the reality. You need to decide what kind of path we need to go through to eventually get what we want as African people. I hope this has been clear to at least outline some fundamental differences and help us to be making now intelligent decisions, right? When it comes to marriage, who are we going to marry? And we must know, if we are going to marry other race, we need to expect certain reality in that marriage. Who are we going to enter into business with? And if we enter the business with other people, must understand how they think and what they are pursuing in life, and that will help us to be intelligent in what we do. We need to understand when we go into political power. So this, in a nutshell, is to help us understand the world as supposed to be. And by understanding the world, we will be closer to our victory, because Santu said that if you know yourself and you don't know your enemy, you have 50% of defeat. If you don't know even yourself and you don't know your enemy, you are 100% defeated. But if you know yourself and you know your enemy, your victory is guaranteed before even you begin the fight. So I'm gonna end with this quote by Marcus Garvey. I've already spoken about it. The attitude of the white man is to dominate, oppress, and exterminate other weak people he comes in touch or in contact with. So I hope this was useful to you. Don't forget to analyze this thing if you find it useful to analyze, to enrich it by your own analysis, and also to bring it to other people, to teach them, so that we can raise higher our level of consciousness and then liberate Africa. Because it's only when our collective level of consciousness is raised so higher, we'll be able to collectively take some actions that will drive Africa in a different path from the destructive path in which Africa finds herself today. Peace and power. If you have 2 shoes, please sell one and buy a sword. If you have 2 trousers, please sell one and buy a sword, because it's time for revolution. And this revolution is first of all in the mind. It's not about burning cars, but it's actually about building our own cars and selling them. Peace and power, freedom and decolonization. See you for another lecture next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.